final session of this crossword series on the letters of John. We're at session 10, which is the entirety of the third letter of John. One chapter, one book, one great little lesson on Christian hospitality. Last week, Father John covered the second letter of John on truth and mutual love, and again being wary of false teachers and not welcoming those that would dissuade from the true Christian faith. And the challenge that's been presented in this whole series is I think kind of summed up by sharing in fellowship together and discussing what is true faith and right faith and the right teaching of Jesus, and getting to share that with each other. And that's something that we're trying to do in this crossword series, study series as a whole. So all that to be said, we've made it to the end of our letters of John, and I want to thank you for coming along for this little journey. It's been fun for me to get to practice teaching, and it'll certainly be even more fun when we get to do it in person, all bunched up in the parish hall. From what I've been told is that it is a really wonderful experience. So I look forward to that, hopefully in the near future, probably in the fall. So today we've got 15 more verses from John, the third letter of St. John. This is certainly in a similar stream of the rest of his writing. And you see just, within the first couple of words that he names the recipient of the letter, gets addressed very clearly. It's a little bit different. These two letters of John, second and third, are much smaller and kind of seem different from what we normally think of as an epistle. If you think of Paul's letters to these different churches or different groups of Christians, there's still some similarities, but I think the third letter of John particularly has a nice personable and affectionate character to it, which I find really endearing. He introduces himself as this elder or presbyter, just the same as 2 John. It doesn't have the same long, eloquent introduction of, the beloved Paul, servant of Christ, friend of all these people. But he does introduce himself, but it's a little bit shorter. There's also something interesting to me, at least, in the difference between 1 John and then 2nd and 3rd, in that on first sort of reading or hearing, you might think that the 2nd and 3rd are something of a sequel, or in the same sort of type or size as the rest. And that's what I would normally expect when you hear like 1st and 2nd, like Corinthians or Thessalonians, that they're a substantial letter that kind of stands on its own while still being addressed to the same group of people. But here this is a little bit different. It's sort of a continuation, but a smaller little excerpt. And I don't have anything profound, but I think it's just fun to see the difference between 1 John and then 2nd and 3rd, that are much shorter little snippets addressed to a very specific group of people or just one person. So what all is happening? Again, it doesn't necessarily feel or look like a typical epistle because it's so short, it's very brief, but it does have a similar structure. There's an opening and this greeting, from the elder to my good friend Gaius. That's the first 4 verses. And then John talks about hospitality and sharing your community and yourself with missionaries or strangers or other people trying to follow Christ. And he's encouraging Gaius to keep doing that he's been doing well. And then there's a bad example and a good example given. This guy Diotrephes, who doesn't necessarily welcome people into the church family as well. And then Demetrius is sort of given 2 thumbs up. And then there's this little conclusion which sounds just like 2 John, where he says, he's had so much, he has more to say, but he doesn't want to waste pen or ink, and I look forward to seeing you soon. This letter sort of describes some of the challenges of the early church in terms of questioning authority and who follows who and who doesn't follow somebody else. This letter is addressed to this guy named Gaius. And John mentioned that Gaius has accepted some brethren. These might have been friends or missionaries or other teachers or followers of John, and Gaius welcomed him in. And this is contrasted with the same guy, Diotrephes, this other leader who's been apparently sort of rejecting anyone associated with John. And he's saying, don't be like this guy, you got to let these people in. And by letting them in, he means giving them food and support or even money to help them with their travels. The idea that they might be missionaries of sharing the Christian message. He says that Diotrephes has apparently some struggles with pride, that he wants to be first. He wants, I think, to get more credit for being some great leader. There's some implication that Diotrephes is sort of actively has a kind of a vendetta against John, perhaps, that he actively turns away anyone that has any connection to him. There's a reading that Diotrephes might be a bishop, so he has some more authority. So John, the way those sort of interpersonal relationships work, there's some question there. But the point of the example given is that Gaius, and by extension us, are to try to be more welcoming and go above and beyond to help those that we can. Diotrephes is portrayed as ambitious and somewhat hostile, and somewhat close-minded. So there's another reading that he sort of represents a portion of the early church that was sort of closed off and a little bit closed-minded and sheltered and very cautious, which there could be good reason for, perhaps. There was some description of people in small communities that didn't trust outside people coming in, which again is part of John's early recommendations to be wary of false teachers here. But I think in this particular example, it's thought that Diotrephes is sort of trying to stand in opposition of John's sort of progressing and continuing the share of like Orthodox Christianity, that he's sort of this stick in the mud in the progression and development of it, and that he doesn't want to welcome any and all Gentiles or Jews in as easily, which is something that we know that we want to share the gospel with everyone. It would seem that John has perhaps written personally to this church, perhaps that this community that Gaius is a part of. And when he says, if I come, that he hopes to visit, and part of the visit would be a rebuking of some sort of Diotrephes for this poor behavior. But there is some question of who's of a higher status or authority, and John is wanting to caution other people from following, or to sort of cut off at the stem, so that Diotrephes' influence doesn't affect a larger group of people. That he's sort of this bad egg, perhaps, that John's trying to nip in the bud, if you will. Then he's contrasted with Demetrius. And it seems that Demetrius is this mutual friend of John and Gaius. The text says that he was pretty much universally loved and respected. Everyone said he's a good guy. And so that we want to continue to welcome and lift him up and help him. But this idea of him being sort of universally well regarded by lots of different people, and that sort of gives That's a greater testament to his character. That's something that I think we can relate to even in our own present day. When we ask friends about other people, like, what do you know about this person? You put a lot of faith in what your friend tells you. If I ask Father John about, this or that priest, and he tells me, like, no, he's a good guy, and that's backed up by what everyone else says, that's a good affirmation. It's on the mind. Just a few weeks ago, we had the funeral for Dave Visney, who I did not have the pleasure of meeting, but by literally all accounts was one of the greatest guys you could meet. That was so wonderful and charming and witty and just so good. And then all week leading up to the funeral, that's what I was hearing from everybody walking into the office and telling me stories about him, that he sounded really hilarious, which I'm always down to laugh. But then at the funeral itself, when I got to meet some of the family, and all those people said the same things, and then there was a table with these pictures and letters and awards, and all these sort of lending themselves to witnessing to the same person of who Dave was, that he was this great guy who loved people, that wanted to share good charm and wit. That gave me a lot of confidence that that's really who he was. So all that to be said, I think this letter gets at something real that we can sort of connect to, that when it's understood by a larger group of people that this person is good, in this case Demetrius that he's talking about, I think that our own experience can affirm that too. In the early church, there were some challenges where you had different groups of people following different leaders, different priests and bishops, who some of them had different ideas. John, through his own letters and the writing of the Gospel, John is given some higher authority and precedence and importance that we want to look to his example. He has higher credibility. And in this moment, he's encouraging Gaius, and by extension, I think us, to try to be similarly welcoming and hospitable. In this letter, there's a wonderful, personable quality to it. I think in some ways more so than a lot of the New Testament, in that it's very brief, but it mentions, 3 people by name. And that doesn't happen all too often. But in this, it's written of John directly calling out and lifting up Gaius's good attributes, his faithfulness to the truth and love, and he's doing well spiritually. He's like, I know your spirit is doing good, so I'm not too worried. But that also kind of gets at the real tangible connection between the spiritual life, how one's soul is doing, how your relationship with God is, and how that can reflect upon your own physical well-being, and also vice versa. If you don't get enough sleep at night, then it's going to be harder for you to pray and read the Bible diligently. But that's just a practical thing. But he's encouraged to do well in maintaining his spiritual well-being and being able to share that with other people, and I think that's an encouragement to us as well. I think I already mentioned it a couple of minutes ago, but I'll say it again, because I think is a big part of Christian hospitality, of welcoming in people and sending them out to do the good work that we have been given to do, so to speak. Thinking for just a moment of what happens at St. Lawrence, it's so evident to me of our relationship with Malawi, and actually supporting with a lot of monetary support, that is doing a lot of good, and that is responding very tangibly to what John is teaching. And I haven't been here when we've welcomed Archbishop Fanuel, but I look forward to doing that, and then that's another good way we can mutually share in that relationship and reflect more of Christ's love, and be able to uplift and support more Christians everywhere. I think it's an encouragement to keep being friendly, thinking very practically about our own parish life here, being friendly and welcoming and really knowing your Christian community and intentionally knowing and expanding it too. I don't think it is that hard to imagine or understand how the last year has sorely limited and hindered that. It's something that I've myself have struggled with, of wanting to know the parish family more. There's a good, at least half of the church or more that I haven't been able to meet, and I really want to. But there's a great hope that we can all come together even more diligently and more faithfully and more intentionally than before, and get to share the family of Christ together. To do that even better than before. And it's a good and Christ-like thing to do, to be charitable and loving to everyone around us, of intentionally welcoming and knowing by name the people around you. And that's something that I look forward to doing as well. John here is talking about missionaries and traveling teachers, but also Christians as well. So I think it definitely applies to us. This idea of welcoming people into your family. And so I do think this letter has a lot of good thought for us to ponder and reflect upon how we can apply it literally in a day-to-day basis. So I conclude by using the same phrase that he concludes, where he says, "Peace be to you." That's how John finishes his letter, and how I want to end it as well. So again, thank you for coming along for this crossword series. I can't wait for the next round of these. I don't want to give anything away, but Father John hinted at what we might do, and I'm excited about it, but I won't tease any more than that. But it's been wonderful so far, and I look forward to doing it some more. So may your fellowship be blessed, and your discussions be led and filled by the Holy Spirit. That's a good thing to have in mind, and I think can be helpful for all of us. Trying to share Christ in a personable and intentional way, that can bear a lot of fruit. So thank you, and peace be to you.